This story was submitted by Ash Titt. My brother, sister, and I recently returned from a month-long trip in Mexico. We're all pretty novice when it comes to traveling, but we are smart and have common sense when it comes to personal safety, so we felt okay about backpacking in a reasonably dangerous country. Our first day in Mexico City was a total culture shock. We were surprised at the lack of English being spoken, and found it confronting the amount of people in the streets, all staring at us, pushing pamphlets in our faces, trying to get us to come into their shops, and some even whistling. We soon realized that we definitely stood out as tourists, and felt a little uneasy with all the attention we were getting, so we quickly went back to our hostel in the historic district to regroup. We spoke to our hostel manager about places to see in the city within walking distance, and he pulls out a map and circles a few spots and the directions to get there. He also scribbled in a section in broken English, "Not good to go here," and pointed to that area on the map. He told us it was a very dangerous area, especially at nighttime, and we should avoid it at all costs. Over the next 2 days, we went to a few of the suggested attractions in the city, and started to feel a little more at ease with the way things worked, and how we should dress and act, etc. On our way back to the hostel, we decided that we would go to the Lucha Libre, or Mexican wrestling, that evening, and booked a tour through our hostel. That evening at around 8 p.m. we were picked up by our tour bus. There were a heap of German backpackers, a few other Australians, and some Swedish girls. We all got shots of tequila from our tour guide, and we were all getting charged up. Once we were at the wrestling event, we continued to enjoy the atmosphere, until the event concluded at about 11:30 p.m. Our bus driver made a stop at a hostel where most of the passengers disembarked, but we still had about 3 blocks to go and asked the driver to take us to our place. The driver didn't seem to really understand our request, and he basically ushered us off the bus. And look where we were. We had been dropped off on the street where our hostel manager told us not to visit, especially at night. We started walking quickly back to our hostel, when 2 Mexican boys about 18 through 20 years old approached us, holding out something in their hands as if trying to sell us something. We had been copying this since we arrived 3 days prior, and were pretty fluent in the phrase, "no gracias," which means no thank you. Within seconds, it was clear that these guys were not trying to sell anything. They were trying to rob us. One started to grab at my bag, while the other started attacking my sister. My bag is a special travel wallet that tightens the more it gets pulled. The attacker became frustrated with this, and let me go and started helping the other one grab at my sister. It was all happening so fast I wasn't sure what was happening, and the first thing that came into my head was, "Oh shit, she's gonna get kidnapped." We were warned by so many people about kidnappings and robberies before we left, and thought this was it. My brother was a little way ahead of us on his phone, and he heard us screaming and came running over. At the same time, my sister's handbag strap broke and the 2 attackers ran away. We immediately took off after them as my sister had her passport in the bag. My brother caught up with them, and as he punched one of them in the back of the head, he turned around and pulled a knife to my brother's throat. My brother put his hands up to surrender, and the attackers ran into a little door in the side of the wall. Our hostel was located directly across the street from a police station, so we immediately ran to the station and noticed 2 officers standing in front talking to each other. We told them, in English, what had happened, and quickly realized that they didn't understand a word we were saying. I tried my hardest to remember the Spanish I had learned before coming over, but I had no luck. By this time it was past midnight, and the officer pointed at his watch and said something along the lines of, "We can't do anything now. It's too late. Come back in the morning." I was horrified, and we abruptly left and went straight back to our hostel, where we reported the incident to the night manager. She helped us out by letting us use the phone and the internet to report a stolen bank card and passport. Over the next few days, we had to go to the embassy to get an emergency passport for my sister, which to get, we needed a police report of the robbery. We found the tourist police to lodge a report, and lo and behold, they didn't speak English. We found a girl who worked at a nearby store who spoke English, and we offered her some money to help us translate. When we told the officers where the incident occurred, they both rolled their eyes and had a little giggle to themselves. Stupid foreigners, they probably thought. For the rest of the trip, we were inside before 5 p.m. and always stayed away from the non-tourist areas. I wish I had remembered more of my Spanish skills, and to this day I wonder if our tour bus driver was in on the whole thing, dropping us off only 3 blocks away from our hostel and not driving us when we asked. This story was submitted by John G. It was mid-May 1986. I was 22, a strong and fit young man on a 45-day backpacking trip across Europe. It had snowed a little bit in England in mid-April, and the sunny mornings in Germany were still shivering cold a couple of weeks later. Now I was in Spain, hiking southwest down the Costa Brava, along a road that mostly overlooked the beaches, somewhere near Barcelona. It was warming up, and I was definitely feeling the heat. Looking down on a very nice beach that required descending many steps to get to it from the road, I noticed everybody was naked. I instantly knew that I wanted to get down there, set up my bath towel in the sand, and watch people for the rest of the afternoon. I was tired from weeks of strenuous walking every day, and this was a very inviting prospect. I was stoked. After descending the stone and then wooden steps, I stepped out onto the sandy beach area. I immediately felt overdressed and dropped my backpack to remove my shirt. I then hoisted my backpack back on and hunted for a suitable place to plop down. I found a spot, dropped my pack, and shed my shorts and shoes. I was now completely naked, with the other 100 or so people around me. I could hear people around me talking as I lie on my belly to get some sun. German and British English seemed to dominate, with perhaps some French and Spanish here and there. I got to look at a lot of people, and a lot of people got to look at me. As the afternoon wore on, I got the idea to pitch my geodesic dome tent on a nearby dirt pad that was hidden from the road. Getting near sunset, most of the sunbathers had gone, and only a few dressed beachcombers remained, so I set up my tent, cracked a bottle of wine, and finished off some carrots and a pâté de foie gras baguette I had made that morning. Then I crawled into my tent, made a pillow out of my clothes, and fell asleep. I was dreaming. Everything was bright orange and yellow. What was that zipping sound, though? It didn't fit into my dream, and it woke me up. I opened my eyes, but I didn't move a muscle. It was probably about 5:45 a.m., and fear gripped me as I realized that somebody was trying to unzip my tent door. I was terrified. The sun was barely up, and someone was attempting to unzip my tent. I rose my shoulders and propped up on my elbows, just in time to see a shadow swiftly rise and move away from the tent door. I realized they must have heard me when I suddenly moved and aborted their plan. My wallet and my ID were the first things on my mind, and thankfully they were still by my head. I got up and exited the tent as soon as the shadow was away from it. My adrenaline was pumping, and I was really scared, but I needed to assess the situation. As I rose and I turned, I saw a big scruffy 6-foot-tall homeless-looking man who was probably in his mid-40s. He was walking away from me on a path that led to the stairs to the road, and he was about 20 yards away from my tent by now. I could tell he was one tough customer, and he was probably looking for money for his next meal, bottle of wine, or worse. He looked like one of the North African economic migrants Spain had reportedly been deluged with at the time. I had learned to recognize them over the past week or so. He walked with this sort of decided wimpy walk, not looking back, as if he were just some harmless guy out for a morning walk. He kept loudly whistling some annoying tune. My fear was gradually displaced by anger, until I turned and saw it. There, by my tent flap, right where they had been trying to unzip, was a solid rounded stone about the size of a cantaloupe. It had not been anywhere near my tent area the previous afternoon. My blood immediately ran cold. I was very careful about where I chose to pitch my tent for the rest of the trip, and opted to check into a few more youth hostels than I normally would have. Most memories of my 1986 hiking trip are getting harder to recall these days, but this one is just as clear as if it were from last week. If you enjoyed this video, you know what to do. If you would like a chance to have your story featured in an upcoming video, make sure you check the description for information on how to submit your stories. Now in the first story, I wouldn't be surprised if the bus driver was in on this whole situation. I'm sure he knew that was a bad area for tourists to be in, and he might have been getting a cut of whatever got stolen. Fortunately, no one was hurt in this interaction, and you made it home safely. Now in the second story, it's a really good thing the zipping woke you up, otherwise that guy might have made it into your tent. And with him having a huge rock like that close by, I don't think he was planning anything nice. I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch you in the next video. And just remember, it's always scarier if it's true. And finished off some carrots and a pâté de foie gras baguette. I'm saying that way too fast. Pâté de foie gras baguette. As I rose and I turned, I saw a big, dirty, unshaven, scruffy, brawny, 6-foot-tall, homeless-looking beachcomber of a man in his mid-40s or so walking away from me on a path that led up the stairs to the road. He was about 20 yards in front of my tent now. I need a zipper sound. Oh, that's so funny.